Hello from the Connection Audit. We're your hosts, Kirsten and Blake.
Today we're asking a question that sits right at the quiet edge of E&M, swinging, and opening up a relationship.
What happens when one partner says yes, but does not actually feel safe enough to tell the full truth?
Because there's a common assumption that couples in E&M or lifestyle spaces must automatically be better communicators, more emotionally secure, or more evolved than everyone else. That sounds comforting, but it is not always true.
The reality is that E&M may require more communication, but it does not guarantee emotional safety. A couple can look calm, confident, experienced, and aligned from the outside, while inside the relationship, one person may be self-silencing, appeasing, freezing, or quietly going along because honesty feels too risky.
And that matters.
Because agreement is not always alignment. A yes is not always readiness. Silence is not always consent. Calm is not always security.
Sometimes one partner is moving forward with curiosity, confidence, or excitement, while the other is managing fear, shame, delayed distress, fear of replacement, or the worry that slowing things down will cost them love, approval, sex, affection, or the relationship itself.
So this episode is an audit of the vulnerability imbalance that can happen inside couples when openness moves faster than truth.
Not to blame curiosity, not to shame desire, not to suggest E&M or swinging is the problem, but to ask a more useful question.
Can both people say no, slow down, change their mind, admit uncertainty, and tell the truth without fear of punishment, withdrawal, humiliation, or emotional debt?
Because when they cannot, the relationship can begin to operate on pseudo-consent. It looks open, it looks mature, it may even sound very reasonable. But underneath, one person may be protecting the bond before protecting the truth.
That hidden gap can create false stability, where things seem calm because conflict is being suppressed rather than resolved.
It can create boundary drift, where each small step feels manageable, but the overall direction moves beyond what one person can safely hold.
And it can create the painful moment where someone eventually says, I never really wanted this, while the other person feels blindsided because they thought they had consent.
So today we're looking at the difference between willingness and appeasement, excitement and pressure, agreement and genuine emotional safety.
We're asking why we talked about it is not the same as we are safe enough to be honest about it.
And we're looking at why the Blossom Society believes education has to come before access, because better connection is not built by rewarding pace, performance, or pretending to be fine.
It is built through honesty, consent, repair, emotional safety, and the ability to pause before damage is done.
So let's get into it. When does yes stop being safety?
This is the Connection Audit.
Right. Let us jump straight away into auditing the culture around this.
Yes. We are starting today by dismantling a very persistent, a very compelling cultural myth.
100%.
It is this pervasive idea that couples who engage in consensual non-monogamy, swinging, or, any form of open relationship dynamics are, by default, operating on some higher plane of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, the evolved couple myth.
Spot on. There is this pedestal that the culture puts these relationship structures on. It is almost treated as if simply stepping into the lifestyle automatically grants you a master's degree in communication and self-awareness.
Right.
It is a fascinating category, we see couples presenting as evolved, treating the relationship structure itself as proof of their maturity. But what we are seeing is that the structure does not do the emotional heavy lifting for you.
That is the pattern, right?
Yeah.
The assumption is deeply flawed, and it is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of what actually creates security.
Yeah.
When we look at the psychological landscape and the current data comparing different relationship structures, the findings are quite clear. Consensual non-monogamy is not a proxy for emotional security.
It just isn't.
No. The data shows that these relationships are, on average, no less satisfying than monogamous ones. They are highly functional for many people. But here's the critical distinction.
Go on.
The structure is not inherently superior, and it certainly does not magically produce emotional maturity out of thin air. Monogamy is not inherently superior either.
Right.
The differentiating factor in the quality of any relationship is never the label. It is always about the maintenance practices happening quietly in the background.
But hold on, let me push back on that for a second. Because if you are in a polyamorous dynamic, for example, the sheer logistics of it force you to communicate.
Yes and no.
Well, you are managing multiple partners, you are dealing with shared Google calendars, you are constantly negotiating time, resources, and, sexual health boundaries.
Yeah, logistically.
Right, but doesn't that sort of reps in the gym approach naturally make you better at it? If you are talking about your feelings 3 times a week just to keep the schedule intact, surely that builds a stronger emotional muscle than a monogamous couple who might never explicitly discuss their boundaries.
I see why you'd reckon that. But that is absolutely the trap. You are conflating logistical communication with emotional safety.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, the logistics of E&M demand significantly more communication. The exposure to new emotional variables, like a partner coming home glowing from a date with someone else, demands that you talk.
Yeah, you have to talk about it.
But requiring more communication is absolutely not the same as guaranteeing emotional safety. A couple can be incredibly articulate. They can be socially confident.
Right.
They can even be highly experienced in lifestyle settings, knowing all the right acronyms and jargon. From the outside, they look like the gold standard of openness.
They look like they've got it all sorted.
100%. Yet internally, one or both of them might be carrying profound insecure attachment. They might be prone to people-pleasing or deeply avoidant of conflict.
Yeah.
They might be wrestling with uneven desire, carrying a lot of internalized shame, or managing a silent, persistent fear of abandonment. The external presentation of being good at this can serve as an incredibly effective mask for a complete lack of internal emotional safety.
That makes so much sense. It is like being incredibly skilled at corporate project management where you can run a board meeting seamlessly, but that does not mean you know how to comfort a crying child or admit when your own feelings are hurt.
Spot on. That is a brilliant analogy.
The administrative skill does not translate to the vulnerable skill. And that external presentation is such a trap, especially because of the specific pressure in these spaces.
Yeah, talk about the pressure for a minute.
Well, in lifestyle environments, there is a very intense cultural expectation to appear open-minded, effortlessly secure, and utterly untroubled by jealousy. It is almost treated as a baseline requirement for entry.
Absolutely. It is an environment where jealousy is often treated as a dirty word,
Mm.
or at best a minor inconvenience that you are expected to swiftly process and move past.
Yes.
If you are struggling, the unspoken implication is that you are just not evolved enough yet. You are holding on to toxic monogamous programming. And that framing turns vulnerability into a competence test.
It really does. It feels like pretending to understand a complex wine menu just to impress a sommelier. You are nodding along, swirling the glass, saying, ah, yes, oaky notes,
Yep.
while inside you're just praying they do not ask you a follow-up question.
That is the reality.
When vulnerability is framed as a test of your emotional evolution, acknowledging fragility feels like a massive failure. It feels like you are letting the side down or proving that you are not cut out for this grand, enlightened adventure. So what happens? Both partners end up masking their true feelings. One partner hides their fear, their hesitation, or their nervous system activation to avoid seeming inadequate, prudish, or difficult. They swallow their discomfort because they genuinely believe they should be able to handle this.
And the other partner, meanwhile, might turn a complete blind eye to the subtle cues of that discomfort because they have bought entirely into the cultural narrative.
They just assume everything is fine?
Spot on. They tell themselves, we are skilled adults, we communicate well, we agreed to this, we can handle this cleanly. They lose their curiosity about their partner's internal world because the external performance is so incredibly convincing.
It creates this profoundly isolating dynamic. If the culture dictates that you must project total confidence, what happens behind closed doors when the internal experience absolutely does not match that external presentation?
You end up with two people in completely different realities.
Right. You have one person suffering in absolute silence and another person assuming everything is progressing perfectly because they heard the word yes. That gap between what is spoken and what is actually felt is where the most profound relational damage occurs.
What we are seeing is that this gap is rarely born of malice. That is crucial to understand.
Yeah, it isn't intentional cruelty.
Not at all.
Hmm.
It is a protective mechanism. It brings us right to the core of how pseudo-consent operates, which is auditing the behavior itself.
Let us get into that.
The fundamental psychological reality we are dealing with here is that honesty requires felt safety. If someone believes that telling the truth about their discomfort will lead to negative consequences, anger, ridicule, being labeled as controlling, or worst of all, loss of affection, they will inevitably prioritize preserving the relationship over expressing their distress.
They will protect the bond before they protect the truth.
100%.
Imagine you are walking across a frozen lake with your partner. You are quite far from the shore. Suddenly you hear the ice cracking beneath your boots.
Terrifying.
Every instinct in your body, every physiological alarm bell is screaming that this is unsafe, that you need to stop, that you need to turn back immediately. But your partner is walking ahead, completely confident, talking about how beautiful the view is, totally oblivious to the sound of the cracking ice.
Right.
And you are terrified that if you ask to stop, if you admit how frightened you are, your partner will call you a coward or leave you behind or be so deeply disappointed in your lack of adventure that your connection will be fundamentally damaged.
Yeah.
So what do? You keep walking. You force a smile. You say you are enjoying the view too. You agree to keep going, not because you genuinely want to, but because the fear of abandoning the connection feels even more dangerous than the cracking ice.
That is precisely the dynamic. And what makes it so insidious is that it rarely looks dramatic from the outside.
It looks calm.
It looks polite. It looks highly functional. It is the partner who says, "I'm fine," in a very calm, measured voice, when their nervous system is actually highly activated.
Oh, the I'm fine trap?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They rationalize their own discomfort. They tell themselves it is just normal jealousy that they need to metabolize on their own. They convince themselves that they simply need to catch up emotionally to where their partner is.
Right, they put the blame on themselves.
Spot on. They are actively minimizing their own internal reactions because the other person seems so certain, so excited, or so completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
What is fundamentally happening is that they stop bringing raw, honest data from their inner world into the shared space of the relationship.
They're curating their responses to maintain the peace.
Yes.
Let us ground this for you listening. Let us imagine a couple, Emma and James. James has been listening to the audiobooks, reading the blogs, and he is really excited to attend a lifestyle club. They have talked about it for weeks. Emma has said yes.
On paper, they have consent.
Right, on paper. But Emma's internal curation, her self-silencing, is a highly complex state. When we look at her internal experience, we have to understand that her silence is not an inability to speak the English language. It is a highly strategic, deeply ingrained survival mechanism.
Yes, 100%.
We can break this down into several distinct internal experiences that Emma is likely navigating, often all at the same time. The very first layer of this is hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance is utterly exhausting. It is the constant low-level scanning of the partner's mood, their tone of voice, their micro-expression.
So like they are in the Uber.
Exactly. Absolutely. Let us say Emma and James are in the Uber on the way to this club. Before Emma even considers speaking up about a boundary or a fear, maybe she just wants to say, "Can we agree to only have a drink at the bar tonight?" She is calculating the relational weather.
Right.
She is looking at James. Is it safe to bring this up right now? What will his reaction be? If she senses even a hint of frustration, a slight sigh, or if she sees how glowing and excited he is, she will withhold her truth.
She just shuts it down.
Spot on. Her entire neurological focus shifts from what do I need right now to how do I manage my partner's reaction so I do not ruin this for him.
And that leads directly into a profound internal split. There is a literal physiological conflict happening within her body. On one side, there is her cognitive brain, the deeply ingrained desire to be a good, supportive, adventurous partner. She wants to be the cool girlfriend.
Yeah, the pressure to be cool.
On the other side, her physical body is sending unmistakable signals of distress. We are talking about the autonomic nervous system. Her chest is tight, her stomach is in knots, her heart rate is elevated, her palms might be sweating.
Her body is rejecting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Her cognitive mind is saying, we agreed to this, I should be fine, I read the same, but he did. While her somatic experience, her body, is screaming, I am not safe.
And that physiological split is what generates the next layer, which is overwhelming shame.
Because she feels she should be better at this.
Absolutely. Because Emma has internalized the cultural myth that she should be evolved enough to handle this, she interprets her bodily distress and her hesitation as a fundamental character flaw.
Wow.
She does not view her discomfort as valid data about her boundaries. She views it as evidence of her own weakness, her insecurity, or her lack of sophistication. She feels ashamed that she cannot just be as breezy and confident as she perceives James to be, or as the people she imagines are already inside the club.
Which pushes her right into the freeze response, or we call appeasement.
Yes.
When the mammalian nervous system detects a threat, and we have to remember, for social creatures like humans, the threat of relational disconnection or conflict is processed by the brain as a literal survival threat, and fighting or fleeing are not viable options. The default response is to freeze or appease.
That is the pattern, right?
So they walk into the club, someone approaches them. Emma passively goes along with the situation. She smiles through the conversation. She says yes to someone buying them a drink. She might even agree to a level of physical escalation solely to reduce the immediate tension in the room.
She is just trying to survive the evening.
Spot on. Appeasement is not consent. Appeasement is about surviving the moment by making oneself entirely compliant and agreeable.
To use a financial metaphor, appeasement is like putting your relationship's comfort on a very high-interest credit card.
Oh, I like that.
Sure, you get the yes today. The transaction goes through, the date goes smoothly, and James thinks they had a successful, boundary-pushing night.
Hmm.
But the emotional interest is compounding in the background.
And it is going to come due.
100%.
That's
And because Emma is so focused on appeasing and surviving that moment in the club, she hits this bizarre timeline delay. This is delayed emotional processing.
right, the fifth internal experience.
Yes. When you are in a state of appeasement, your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear, is essentially suppressing the full weight of the panic so you can function socially.
You literally don't feel it in the moment.
Absolutely. You are profoundly disconnected from your own needs. You are entirely focused outward on keeping the peace. It's often only hours, days, or even weeks after an event that the nervous system finally settles enough for the person to realize how distressed they actually were.
Oh, this is such a crucial point. Let us unpack this for you listening. If you are the one pushing the gas pedal right now, you might think your partner is totally fine because they smiled at breakfast the next day.
Yeah, they seemed happy.
But the reality is, Emma's body was just carrying the debt. It isn't until Tuesday morning, when James has gone to work and the house is quiet, that her nervous system finally drops the shield.
And the crash happens.
Exactly,
Yep.
100%. Suddenly, she is sobbing at the kitchen counter, completely overwhelmed by anxiety, and she might not even fully connect it back to Saturday night. This is why a partner might say yes in the moment, seem completely fine during the event, and then experience a total emotional collapse 3 days later. They literally did not know what they were feeling until the immediate social pressure was removed.
Absolutely. And when that realization hits, it brings a very quiet, very private grief that is the sixth layer.
Grief over what?
There is a mourning process that happens when you sense your relationship is steadily moving into territory that you have not genuinely consented to, but you feel utterly powerless to stop it.
Wow, yeah.
Emma is grieving the loss of the safety she thought she had. She is mourning the old monogamous bubble, or the slower version of the relationship that actually felt manageable to her. And this grief is intensely lonely because she feels she cannot share it with the person who is supposed to comfort her.
And that grief is deeply entangled with the fear of replacement, which is the seventh internal experience.
Yeah, the constant worry.
This is perhaps the most haunting thought for the self-silencing partner. It is the insidious, persistent whisper that says, if I cannot provide this experience, if I cannot be okay with this dynamic, if I am too difficult or too slow, James will simply find someone else who can.
Spot on.
She views her compliance as the literal price of admission to keep her partner. She believes that setting a hard boundary or admitting her true limitations will result in being traded in for a more evolved, more fun model.
Which is then compounded by the final piece, the fear of burdening him.
Right.
This happens especially when the unaware partner appears highly enthusiastic, invested, and visibly excited about the new dynamic. Emma looks at James's joy. She sees how alive he looks talking about the lifestyle, and she thinks, I cannot ruin this for him. I cannot be the wet blanket. I cannot be the reason he loses this excitement.
So she just absorbs it all.
100%. She suppresses her own needs entirely to avoid dampening his experience. When you look at all of that, the hypervigilance, the physical split, the shame, the freeze response, the delayed processing, the grief, the fear of replacement, and the fear of burdening, you realize how incredibly intense the internal landscape is for the silent partner.
It is massive.
In attachment terms, the drive to preserve the connection completely overrides the drive to express distress.
But this brings up a critical question, and I want to push on this because it is often asked with a lot of bewilderment and, frankly, a bit of defensiveness by the unaware partner.
I know where you're going with this.
How can James be entirely oblivious to this suffering? How can you live with someone, love them, share a life with them, share a bed with them, and not realize they are navigating that level of internal turmoil? If I am James, I am thinking, I love my wife. I am not a monster. If she was in that much pain, I would see it straight away.
It is a vital question. And we have to approach it with a lot of compassion because the answer lies in the phenomenon of asymmetrical information.
Okay, unpack that.
It is like a chessboard where James thinks they are playing a cooperative game and Emma feels she is navigating a minefield. The unaware partner is often operating under a completely different set of assumptions. People frequently mistake explicit discussion for actual emotional safety.
Because they talked about it.
Absolutely. If James and Emma sat down, talked about the rules, read a book together, and agreed on the boundaries, James assumes the issue is settled.
Well, it checks the box.
Spot on. He assumes that discomfort has been metabolized. He over-indexes on the spoken words. But she said yes. We agreed to this last week. And he entirely underreads the vital physiological cues.
Because reading those cues requires a different type of listening. He misses the hesitation before the agreement. He misses the flattening of effect. That moment where her face just goes a bit blank and her voice loses its melody. He misses the sudden quietness or the subtle behavioral withdrawal that follows the conversation.
100%. He takes the yes at face value because, quite frankly, taking it at face value is incredibly convenient.
It lets him do what he wants.
Right. And often, the unaware partner unintentionally benefits from the pace of progression. If James is the one driving the curiosity and Emma is saying yes, there is very little incentive for him to stop, turn around, and probe deeply into her quietness.
He doesn't want to rock the boat if the boat is going where he wants.
That is the pattern, right? He wants to believe the yes is genuine because it allows him to proceed with what he desires. The couple is no longer operating on mutual vulnerability. They are operating in a state where one person is making decisions with full access to their own excitement, and the other is just frantically trying to manage the fallout.
That asymmetry hollows out the relationship over time. It creates what we identify as the cumulative cost of hidden fear.
Yes.
And there are several forms of relational damage that take root here. Let us walk through them because this is where the rubber meets the road for anyone listening. The first form of damage is false stability.
False stability is so common.
From the outside, and even to James on the inside, the relationship appears calm and highly functional. They are arguing about the lifestyle. They are coordinating calendars. They are going on dates. It looks like peace.
But it isn't.
No, it is a deeply misleading piece. It is built entirely on suppressed conflict, not resolved conflict. The tension isn't gone. It is just being stored off the books by the silent partner.
And that false stability paves the way for the second form of damage, boundary drift.
Oh, this one is insidious.
Absolutely. Because Emma is not signaling clearly when she reaches her limit, there is no natural friction in the dynamic to slow it down. So the couple continuously escalates. Let us say month 1, they just talked online with other couples.
Which feels safe enough.
Right. That drifted into meeting for drinks in month 2. By month 4, it drifts into physical contact, which drifts into more frequent dates or greater sexual novelty.
Just creeping forward, bit by bit.
Spot on. Each small step feels individually manageable to James. He thinks, well, she was fine with drinks, so a kiss is just the next logical step. But the overall direction is moving far beyond what Emma can actually safely hold. She's being pulled further and further out onto the cracking ice.
As they drift further out, the third form of damage takes root, and this one is a slow poison. Resentment and intimacy erosion.
Intimacy dies in the dark.
100%. Intimacy is not just about sharing details of your day or even sharing physical affection. It is fundamentally dependent on perceived partner responsiveness. It is the deeply held belief that if I reveal my true, raw, messy self to you, you will respond with care, understanding, and protection. When Emma stops bringing her honest data into the connection because she anticipates a negative response, authenticity dies. She starts living a parallel emotional life. She might be physically present, but emotionally, she is walled off.
She's completely isolated.
She feels profoundly unseen, unsafe, and intensely alone within her own relationship. Resentment builds rapidly because she feels she is sacrificing her own psychological well-being to subsidize James's lifestyle, and he doesn't even notice the cost.
That brings us to the fourth form of damage. And I want to slow down here because this is incredibly nuanced and often wildly misunderstood. This is what we call transgression injury.
Yes, this is the massive aha moment. Here is where we have to flip the script entirely on how we view betrayal.
Go on.
In the context of consensual non-monogamy, the deepest injury isn't always about a broken rule. It isn't always about a specific external sexual act that went too far.
Right.
The profound relationship-altering injury is the crushing realization by the silent partner that my partner moved forward without truly knowing or caring what this was costing me.
100%. It is the devastating feeling that her internal world was completely ignored in favor of his external experience.
Yeah.
Let us say James followed every single agreed-upon rule to the letter. He checked in. He used protection. He came home on time.
Mm,
Technically, he did nothing wrong according to the contract,
yeah.
but Emma is still devastated.
Why? Because the lack of emotional attunement feels infidelity adjacent.
Absolutely. The betrayal is not about who James slept with. The betrayal is that James abandoned her emotionally to do it.
Wow.
The injury is the perceived lack of care for her emotional safety. He was so focused on the technical boundaries that he completely missed the relational boundary.
That is such a powerful distinction. The betrayal is the emotional abandonment. And because that injury is compounding day after day, week after week, we inevitably reach the final form of damage. Abrupt collapse.
Breaking point.
Yes, because all of this discomfort, all of this fear has been accumulating off the ledger for months or even years. Emma's capacity finally maxes out. She reaches a point where appeasement is no longer psychologically sustainable.
The credit card is maxed.
Spot on! The credit card is maxed and the emotional repo man has arrived. And she suddenly snaps. The conversation sounds extreme. I cannot do this anymore, or I never really wanted this in the first place, or I only agreed because I was terrified you would leave me.
The tragedy of that collapse is staggering. Let us look at both sides of that moment. Emma, in that moment of eruption, feels she is finally telling the truth. She feels she is finally surviving.
She is finally stepping off the cracking ice.
Yes, it is a moment of desperate honesty.
But wait, let us look at James's perspective, because we cannot ignore his reality. From the unaware partner's perspective, isn't that just lying?
Yeah, that is exactly how he sees it.
If you are James and you thought everything was fine for 18 months, you are not just blindsided, you are furious. You feel manipulated, you think, I asked you 100 times if you were okay, and you said yes. You let me believe this was our shared reality.
Right.
To James, it feels like a sudden, inexplicable reversal, a total betrayal of the agreements he thought they shared. He is left wondering, if you were suffering this whole time, why didn't you just tell me?
Absolutely. That is exactly how it feels. And we have to validate that anger and that confusion. It is incredibly disorienting.
It is a complete shock to the system.
But we also have to unpack why the lie felt safer than the truth. And the answer, of course, is what we've been auditing this entire time, because the relationship did not possess the consequence safety required for her to tell the truth.
Yeah.
She might have asked, are you okay?
Mm.
But the subtext of the relationship dictated that the only acceptable answer was yes, which pivots us directly to auditing the solution. How do we fix this? How do we build relationships that can actually hold the weight of the truth?
This is where we talk about the core philosophy. Education has to come before access. Mere agreement is wholly insufficient.
100%.
We cannot treat emotional safety inside the primary couple as a background assumption. It must be treated as a prerequisite competency. If we want to improve the quality of these connections, we have to move away from rewarding pace, performance, and pretending to be fine, and move aggressively towards increasing permission for truth.
We need actionable, practical steps for building what we call truth-bearing relationships.
Right.
And the first step is perhaps the most challenging in our current culture. We must normalize ambivalence. We have to completely change the narrative around hesitation.
It isn't a failure.
Absolutely not. In so many spaces, uncertainty or changing your mind is viewed as a failure of nerve. We need to reframe that entirely. Hesitation, mixed feelings, and uncertainty are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a highly functioning internal compass trying to calibrate to brand new information.
Spot on.
Not yet, and I do not know, need to be accepted as complete, legitimate answers that command respect.
Not yet is a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
If you are listening to this and you are the one feeling pushed, you need to hear that. Ambivalence is vital data. If we normalize it, we remove the shame associated with it.
Yeah.
The second practical step is about developing a more sophisticated vocabulary for consent. We need to distinguish genuine willingness from appeasement. A yes is not just a yes. We need to look behind the word.
This is so important.
There is a very powerful diagnostic question that can change the entire trajectory of a conversation. Do not just ask, did you say yes? Or, are you okay with this? Ask, what made yes feel safer than no in that moment?
That question is transformative. What made yes feel safer than no? It bypasses the surface agreement and directly addresses the underlying emotional economy.
Right.
If you ask your partner that question and the honest answer is, saying yes felt safer because I was afraid you would be angry or distant or disappointed I said no, then you do not have consent, you have compliance, you have appeasement.
100%.
The goal is to reach a place where saying no feels just as safe, relationally, as saying yes.
But how do you get there? Getting to a place where no is safe often requires the third step, private reflection before joint progression.
You have to do the solo work.
We have to acknowledge a difficult truth about human behavior. Many people cannot tell the truth to their partner until they have first found the courage to tell it to themselves.
Yeah.
When the pressure to please is high, people lose touch with their own boundaries. They literally cannot hear their own internal voice over the volume of their partner's excitement. We need to emphasize the necessity of structured, private check-ins.
Taking that step back.
Taking time away from the partner's influence to sit alone and ask oneself, what am I actually feeling in my body right now? What am I not saying? What feels harder to say than it should?
You have to know your own mind before you can share it. Which leads to the fourth step, teaching pause and repair as strengths.
This is huge.
In a culture that often glorifies momentum, escalation, and always moving to the next level, hitting the brakes can feel like a failure. We need to completely reverse that perspective. Slowing down a dynamic when things feel uncertain is a profound sign of relational integrity.
It is actually a strength.
Absolutely. It shows deep respect for the relationship's actual capacity. A couple that knows how to pause, assess, and repair a small rupture is infinitely more resilient than a couple that just aggressively pushes forward through their discomfort, hoping the speed will blur the pain.
That ability to pause seamlessly connects to the ultimate readiness marker, establishing consequence safety. This is the bedrock of a truth-bearing relationship.
Yes, it is the foundation.
So what does consequence safety actually look like in a living room on a Tuesday evening? Consequence safety means asking the hard questions. Can both people in this relationship disappoint each other without fear of punishment?
That is the test.
Can they hit the brakes, change their minds, or revoke a previous agreement without creating an emotional debt that they will be forced to pay off later in guilt, withdrawal of affection, or passive-aggressive behavior?
If the answer is no, if Emma knows that saying, "I changed my mind," means James is going to sigh heavily, sleep on the edge of the bed, and be short with her for 3 days, then the couple is not ready to open up, regardless of how much they have read or discussed.
Consequence safety is the metric that matters.
Absolutely. To help you audit your own dynamics, we need to outline clear behavioral flags. These are the risk markers that indicate a lack of consequence safety and the presence of pseudo-consent. What should people be watching out for in their own lives?
The first glaring flag is the pattern of a partner repeatedly saying, "I'm fine," or "it's okay," but their behavior immediately contradicts their words. They say they are fine, but you notice they become significantly flatter in their affect. Their voice loses its energy. They become quieter. They withdraw physically, maybe crossing their arms or creating distance on the sofa. They are fine in text messages using exclamation points, but distant and guarded in person?
That flattening is the nervous system shutting down to manage the distress. It is the freeze response in action.
Yeah.
Another critical flag is when you observe yourself or your partner struggling to ask for what you want or struggling to state a boundary without apologizing straight away.
The constant apologies.
Spot on. If every request for reassurance or every statement of limitation is wrapped in excessive apologies, "I'm so sorry to be difficult. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but late to ruin the mood," but that is a clear indicator of shame and a lack of permission to take up space in the relationship.
It shows that stating a basic human emotional need feels like an imposition rather than a right.
100%.
Another major risk marker is examining the momentum of the relationship. Look at why you're moving forward. Is the couple escalating, taking new steps, meeting new people, crossing new thresholds, simply because one partner is consistently more persuasive, more certain of what they want, or more highly sexually motivated?
That is a massive vulnerability imbalance.
If the progression of the dynamic is entirely driven by one person's certainty, while the other person's primary role is just trying to accommodate that certainty, you are looking at a profound problem.
That is the pattern, right?
Yeah.
The momentum should always be dictated by the slowest partner's comfort, not the fastest partner's ambition.
Spot on.
And the final, perhaps most overarching flag to watch out for is any framing of vulnerability as a test that you are failing.
Yeah, that is toxic.
If expressing fear, jealousy, or the need to slow down is met with exasperation, or if it is framed as evidence that you are not doing the work or that you are inherently unsuited for the relationship structure, that is emotional coercion disguised as personal development. It shuts down honesty entirely.
It is so important to audit these behaviors with immense compassion. It is incredibly human to want to please the person you love. It is human to want to be seen as easygoing, adventurous, and evolved.
We all want that.
But the reality is that true intimacy, the kind of connection that actually sustains us over a lifetime, cannot survive on appeasement. A connection is only as strong as the truth it can safely hold.
The goal here is not to discourage exploration. We are not saying these relationship structures cannot work beautifully. They absolutely can.
100%.
The goal is to ensure that the exploration is built on solid ground, where both people are actually present, not just physically, but emotionally.
To bring this all together, we want to leave you with a compassionate summary. We know that navigating these dynamics is incredibly complex.
It really is.
If you recognize yourself in the self-silencing partner, if you realize you have been carrying the emotional debt of appeasement, please know that this is a common pattern. You are not broken.
No, not at all.
It is born out of a deep desire to protect the connection you cherish. But protecting the connection with silence eventually destroys it. And if you realize you might be the unaware partner driving the pace, do not spiral into shame.
Use this as a moment to pivot.
Absolutely. We want to give you 3 useful takeaways to implement in your own relationship starting today.
Number 1, audit your agreements for consequence safety. 100% of the time, before moving forward with any new step in your relationship dynamic, ask yourself and your partner, can I change my mind tomorrow about this without being punished, shamed, or emotionally abandoned?
So crucial.
If you cannot confidently answer yes, you need to pause. The safety net must be built before you jump.
Number 2, normalize the power of not yet. Hesitation is not a weakness. It is vital data from your nervous system trying to keep you safe. Treat ambivalence as a clear, necessary signal to slow down and reconnect with your partner, not as a hurdle you need to blindly jump over to prove your commitment to a lifestyle.
And number 3, look behind the yes. When auditing your behavior and your communication, learn to distinguish between genuine willingness and appeasement. Do not settle for surface agreement. Ask yourself or ask your partner, what made yes feel safer than no in that moment? The answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about the actual state of your emotional safety.
Thanks for listening. We hope we've helped you uncover a deeper understanding around connecting with other people and giving you the courage to be honest with yourself, your partner, and those people you connect with. Our only ask is if you know one person you feel would benefit from listening to our conversation, please point them in our direction. Let's start a conversation about how we can build better connections.
And if you have any questions, a theme, or a topic you'd like us to cover, please give us a like, leave a comment, and we'll get it scheduled into the running order.